Tsukihime, a visual novel that includes this little creature. Originally first released as trial editions back in Comiket, one was a trial version released on December 24, 1999, and the other was the Half Moon edition, which only contained 2 routes, releasing on August 8, 2000. It was officially released completely on December 29, 2000. It was the brainchild of both Kinoko Nasu and Takeuchi Takashi, the co-founders of the legendary VN studio Type Moon. Nasu wrote the scenario and directed the project, while Takashi worked as the artist for the VN as well as designing the characters. And this being their first visual novel created by the studio as well. Again, while it was popular, it wasn't as popular as the next big visual novel from Type Moon. Of course, that being Fate Stay Night. But get that stupid shit out of here. We're talking about Tsukihime, baby. We're going to be talking about this little goofy ass munchkin right here. Now, we'll only be taking a look at the original version of Tsukihime, which I refer to as Tsukihime 2000. We're not taking a look at the fan disc, Tsukihime Plus disc, or its side story or next chapter or whatever you want to call it, Kagetsuya Toya. Maybe another time, but not now. We're also not going to take a look at the remake that recently came out, since I've not read that yet, but I did hear that one was pretty great. We're also not going to take a look at the supposedly god-awful anime that everyone hates, even though I don't really get the hate about it, or the fighting game Melty Blood, or the odd GBA port Rine Tsukihime. Yes, there's a GBA port of Tsukihime. So with all that said, let's take a look at Tsukihime 2000. Our story begins with a young man named Shiki Tono, who has woken up at the hospital after surviving a fatal accident that took the lives of his parents. He soon sees that he is able to see lines throughout that no one can see but only him, and using a knife, he is able to slice things in half, like slicing a whole bed in half using a fruit knife. Soon after escaping the hospital to get away from all the doctors, he meets a young mage named Akko, who gives him a special pair of glasses that allow him to not see lines anymore. Years after leaving the hospital where he begins living with some relatives, he gets a letter saying that his father has passed away and he is summoned back to his original home, where he has to live there again and reconnect with his younger sister Akiha along with the maids Hisui and Kohaku. At first, everything seems to go well. He returns back to his school, reuniting with his friends Akihiko and Satsuki, and meets up with fellow senpai Ciel. But one day, while walking to school, he walks past a young woman with short blonde hair, which triggers something he never expected to experience before in his life. He has the feeling of wanting to slice and kill this woman. This alone triggers many stories that he'll encounter in his life, where the choices you choose will create your own story for Shiki. Obviously, I'm not going to expose a ton of the story, but this is pretty much the basic synopsis of what you're getting into. And this is overall intriguing because you have this young man who has the ability to cut anything in half with a quick slice. You think to yourself, oh my god, what's he going to do with these powers? Use them for good? Use them to make a live action Fruit Ninja movie? Nah, but I genuinely love how discreet the overall synopsis is, and it allows readers to fully enjoy the story on their own and experience a lot of what the synopsis is hiding from them. It does a great job of just giving us a great setup to the big story of Tsukihime, especially when you start reading it, because it allows us to get to know our main characters, especially Shiki and the main heroines. We get the chance to know their personalities and the atmosphere of Tsukihime, so I think the VN does a great job introducing us to the world and these characters. Speaking of which, let's move on and talk about the smaller aspects of Tsukihime before we move on to the more important stuff. So let's start off with the art. The art for Tsukihime is one of the most simplest art styles I've seen in a visual novel. Of course, we have to remind ourselves that this VN was in development during the late 90s. It's not like canon style of art, but it's simpler, and I think this works perfectly well for the original Tsukihime. The art is especially well done due to its background art. The background art captures the fantastic atmosphere or tense nature of the story, along with its use of colors, like a light blue lighting style when it's daytime, and a very dark blue color style when it's nighttime, or a dark orange or brownish color of lighting when it focuses on the nighttime setting inside of a building like the Tono Manor, or in specific moments in Ciel's route, or even giving it an evening look. It also gives off a more realistic look, especially when we visit some of the locations of the story, like the school, the city, and the park. The overall background art works perfectly with Tsukihime as a whole. Its realistic art style helps immerse readers in the story and does a great job setting the mood for some specific moments. Plus the CGs really make some important scenes leave a lasting impact, all of which look colorful and stylish, especially the ending CGs, as they are really gonna hit you hard in the feels. But hey, Look at these character designs. They're adorable. Again, it's simple, but it's memorable in a way where you know, oh, this is Arcueid. Oh, this is Ciel. Oh, this is La Criatura. Another small aspect is the music, and in my opinion, this is one of the most memorable things about Tsukihime that I just genuinely love. The music for Suki has some of the most, again, this might be a reoccurring word in this video, so don't blame me, simplest pieces of music that captures each moment spot on. It's a variety of music pieces that feel both elegant and playful, tense yet emotional. A fun feeling piece of music when hanging out with your friends at school, an intense yet threatening piece of music when you come across danger, or a tear-jerking piece of music where you embrace a person you've been looking for all your life. Tsukihime's music can be repetitive at times, but is no doubt one of the more memorable aspects of the VN because it does a fantastic job leaving an impact to the reader, especially the music during the credits. Another important aspect of the original Tsukihime is its voice acting and format for the VN. Why? Because there's actually no voice acting at all, which is a fascinating choice because I hated this when I first started reading it. I don't know. In my opinion, I'd rather read a visual novel that has voice acting rather than one that doesn't. Uh-oh, controversial opinion, oh no. Anyway, I did get used to the fact that there is no voice acting. For what it is, it definitely helps with the overall experience, as the music, art, and writing help immerse you into the story. It's fine if there's no voice acting, because at least the other aspects of the visual novel help you immerse yourself. A text box basically covers the screen while the art and character is behind it. This isn't my favorite way of reading a visual novel, but it's not something that I would stop reading for. The original Tsukihime having no voice acting was odd at first, but I grew to liking it as I continued reading. It really helped you feel immersed into the story and allowing you to feel the emotions of the writing within or feel how powerful and hard-hitting a CG can be. It does it in a way where readers can genuinely be in shock or baffled by specific parts of the story. Well, I probably made one or two Tsukihime fans mad, but anyway, now that we talked about the smaller aspects of Tsukihime, let's move on and focus on some of the more juicier stuff of the VN, shall we? So the gameplay of Tsukihime is heavily based on choice making, something that makes total sense for a visual novel. But playing Tsukihime blind, not like actually blind, but like, you get what I mean, not knowing anything about Tsukihime, you're bound to find some trouble. The choices you make for Shiki will help you create his story. You get to make your own story. The choices you make can lead you to 5 different routes. Now some routes are separated to the 2 main story sections within Tsukihime. The first being the near side of the moon, where Arcueid and Ciel's routes are found within this section. The second being the far side of the moon, where Akiha's, Hisui's, and Kohaku's routes are found within this section. The choice making of Tsukihime can be pretty difficult for newcomers as it can lead them to many bad endings within the story, and there's a lot of bad endings to uncover. Thankfully, Ciel will be there to teach you after you get a bad ending, explaining why you got it. All 5 routes will have 2 different endings, the first being the true end and the second being the good end, but we'll go over the endings in a bit. Now let's focus on the routes, starting off with the near side of the moon routes, those being Arcueid's and Ciel's routes. Now the routes for the near side of the moon all have one main focus or theme, that being its main focus on vampires. Shiki is suddenly thrusted into a battle between vampires and hunters, and it's up to him to decide whether or not to help Arcueid defeat a dangerous vampire that can kill many innocent people to stay alive, or help Ciel kill off the remaining vampires to keep the world safe. Plus, it's his opportunity to figure out how he'll be able to use his powers, the ability to see the depth of people and things. Whereas in the far side of the moon, the main focus of vampires is pretty much forgotten. The routes you'll find here are Akiha's, Hisui's, and Kohaku's. The main focus of the far side of the moon routes is the Tono family. Shiki will explore, find, and discover a shocking reveal that will not only question his trust in his family, but also challenge his friendship with Akiha, along with Hisui and Kohaku, leading him to find out a major piece of family history that he wasn't supposed to know. Each route paves the way for a completely different and unique experience, and I genuinely love almost all the routes. They're done in a way where you explore each girl's issue and help them out, while they also help Shiki with his problems. Every route explores the main theme or message of Tsukihime, which we'll get into in a bit, but it does a great job of just being unique and providing an emotional attachment to both the readers and characters. Even without having any voice acting, these routes, these characters, you can still feel strong emotion coming from the words they say. You'll cry with them and smile with them. Tsukihime's routes aren't just routes that you read to see Shiki get together with one of the girls, they are routes where you explore how fragile these heroines can be. It doesn't try to sugarcoat it, it tries to make it as real as possible, giving it a cracked and ugly look into the lives of each heroine. Each heroine has went through something in their life that made them question if it's still worth living. Some heroines are strong, others are fragile, some are scared, others are willing to sacrifice. And it's heartbreaking to watch as you continue to read, but it does it in a way where you want to try and help these girls out. And I like that. As I've said, almost all the routes I love, but I mainly have a problem with Ciel's route. The main issue of her route is that it's almost a carbon copy of Arcueid's route. Besides some slightly new scenes, what you're reading is basically the same as what you read in Arc's route. It's where you get to the final act of Ciel's route where everything becomes new and original, which, if I may say, was done incredibly well. But it doesn't change the fact that 75% of Ciel's route is literally just Arcueid's route, which is sad to be honest, but thankfully the last act of her route does a great job of bringing in a creative yet emotional way of finishing off her route. It's also thanks to the writing of Tsukihime that really makes each route feel heartbreaking and emotional, shocking and suspenseful. Its writing is what crafts each route into its own experience. It's not afraid to get dirty or say terrible things. In fact, it does so in a way where it can genuinely shock you. There are moments here and there that can leave your breath hanging, like the thrilling nature of a fighting sequence, the heartbreaking emotion of losing someone you love, and the shocking reveal of a main heroine getting by a very important character. But the writing does one theme perfectly, detailing the main focus of Tsukihime within each route. It is where we focus on the main theme of Tsukihime where we start to see the true message within, a message about life and death. Throughout each route, we see our boy Shiki trying to keep his sanity in place as he continues to struggle from becoming a monster. He tries his best to live his life, but continues to struggle as he becomes unstable, making his conditions worse and possibly leading him to slowly die. But we see that he doesn't mind at all. If he has a short amount of time left to live, he continues on and values what he has before time runs out. Even as the world around him goes insane or deadly or the last minutes start to disappear, he still continues to hold a philosophical, yet good view of life as he continues to value the things he has in his life. That's basically the true message of Tsukihime, life and death, and how they come to terms with it. Every character is trying their best to live their lives to the fullest, yet is having trouble trying to escape and embracing death. No doubt characters can find the true meaning of death, but that doesn't stop them from finding out and coming to terms with the will to live their life. Even the antagonists want the will to live, but fail due to becoming so frustrated and tired about the circumstances they have in their lives. They're not the same anymore. They've grown insane and dangerous, hurting others rather than embracing the importance of life. The story and characters of Tsukihime come to terms with the meaning of life and death, whenever and however it comes. It's a message that defines each route, allowing each heroine, along with Shiki, to find their purpose and to see if they can live their life to the fullest. Whether it's to stay alive and continue to be together with your loved one, the power to live in order to see the smile of a certain someone, the sacrifice to make in order to give someone a chance to live their life, the chance to see someone grow as a person and make a stand in their life, and the opportunity to give someone you love a purpose in living their life. This theme is shown well when we focus on its endings, especially within the true endings of each route. Now, like I said before, each route has either a true end and a good end, with the exception of Kohaku's route as she only has a true end. Every true route, in my opinion, showcases each heroine, or our main boy Shiki, coming to terms with both life and death. Whether it's Shiki coming to terms with Arc leaving him as she returns to her deep sleep, Akiha accepting the sacrifice that Shiki did in order to save her life and live it fully, Hisui moving on from the death of Kohaku as she begins her new life with Shiki, and Kohaku going off on her own and enjoying the life she was missing out on. These characters fully come to terms with life and death, now realizing that life itself is something precious and special, as we only get to live it through it only once. To me, Akiha's true end especially helps out with this theme. Akiha suffers from heavy psychological damage due to her and her bloodline family being half demons who have a cursed demon blood, and she is close to losing her sanity due to this. Akiha in reality never got to live a perfect life due to this. So in her true end, Shiki literally sacrifices himself in order to save Akiha, coming to terms with his own death and accepting it, as it gives the opportunity to let not only Akiha live, but to live a normal life. And Akiha accepts it. While saddened by the sacrifice Shiki made, she continues on with a positive outlook of life, not letting her brother's sacrifice go to waste. These endings are generally some of the most emotional parts in the entirety of Tsukihime. They're endings that don't really feel like a happy ending. They're more so a bittersweet end to each heroine, but when we come to terms with what it will bring to us, our only choice is to continue on with our life. Hisui and Arcueid's true ends do a great job as well, with Hisui accepting Kohaku's death. Instead of crying and blaming herself for her sister's death, she moves forward, cherishing the memories she has made with her sister as she and Shiki live their life together, united as one. While Arcueid, Shiki fully accepts that Arc will disappear as he has completed her mission. It's a tearful goodbye as both characters want to stay together, however the two come together and accept what will happen. Shiki will never forget the memories he has made with Arcueid, but he'll continue moving forward with his life and live on with these memories. Tsukihime has its own strengths and faults. It's not a perfect visual novel, it's not a masterpiece, but it's a goddamn fantastic visual novel that creates a new meaning to the theme of life and death. What Nasu and Takashi did for their first visual novel is nothing short but one of a kind. It's simple with its art and music, but it's immersive and atmospheric once it's put together. It doesn't hold back with its writing as it continues to explore the theme of life and death, but it does an incredibly great job presenting each character with their own stories, issues, and characteristics. To me, I didn't go into this with any expectations. I went in blind and not knowing what to expect. And honestly, I think that was for the best, because I had one of the most incredible experiences I've had for a non-moege visual novel. Tsukihime 2000, in my opinion, is a visual novel that at least everyone should read and experience. It's entertaining, suspenseful, shocking, and downright satisfying. I love Tsukihime. Again, it's not perfect, but it's a damn great visual novel. I'm not the only one who thinks Tsukihime isn't perfect, so let's take a look at a few opinions from some fellow visual novel readers. Good, but not great. It does some things better than Fate, slightly better pacing. I like Shiki more than Shiro, hot take, ? I like its tighter focus on psychological character development consistently, even more than Fate. However, it's extremely dated. I don't know if I could read it and enjoy it as consistently as I did in 2010. That said, it does have a lot of fun, unique things regardless. Easy to see how it influenced other stories. Ange. Tsukihime is a really dear piece that resonates with me most. Its contrast of morbid circumstances or truths and the hopeful optimism that can be found through Shiki's philosophy. It's one of those thrillers that seem bleak. It never feels completely depressing or nihilistic. There's always a hint of hope and beauty that each route wants to convey through the struggles of the protagonist and heroine. Rather than feeling down at what can be considered bittersweet, I often felt inspired at each route's end. That though, there are often hard to swallow inevitabilities in life that will bring nothing but hardship. There is always a reason to hold your head up. It hasn't left my heart since I first read it. The remake only further cementing itself as one of the most inspirational stories I have read. Nei-san. Tsukihime was my first visual novel ever, and I was blown away by how dark the story was. Sometimes a bit unnecessary though, and it made me want to read other visual novels because it introduced to great characters, a story where your choices have massive impact on what happens, an actual complete story because I hate that the anime and manga just never end, and cool music to enhance the experience. Humi. I read Tsukihime after Fate's Stay Night, so probably unsurprisingly I had fairly natural expectations going into it, partially from that, but also knowing it had a far smaller budget. For the most part, I say my impressions were much better than I thought at first. It's honestly a really good visual novel, but it is far from perfect and quite easily the weakest Type Moon visual novel by a massive margin in my opinion. But I still even then rate it highly because even with its big shortcoming, rushed story beats, repetition, an unlikable protagonist, and a rather poor art direction, all of the pros heavily outweigh the cons. As like all visual novel beginners VNs do, Arcueid's route had a similar effect to me nonetheless. I'd say it definitely did leave a good impression that it had the job as a beginner route, but otherwise it was constricted. CL's route suffers from some major issues with Arcueid's route overlapping it most of the time. Same issues as Arc's route, but the finale sequences are pretty much the highlights. CL though was overall meh as a heroine. Akiha's route was pretty good for the beginner route of Farside, and she's a pretty solid heroine, and both endings having bittersweet ends like that are something to my liking and disliking in a good way. The issue I had mostly with this route was the pacing here and there. Hisui's route is where Shiki carried hard alone with his bed scenes and mental state functionings. But the issue I have here is that I find Hisui's conflict lacking. Kohaku's route is definitely the best way to end off Tsuki on a high note. Another reason why Hisui's route really compares well to Kohaku is the interconnections between the two, and Kohaku's route being the final payoff. Vampire Alt Rouge. So is Tsukihime a landmark in the visual novel community? Did it really leave a mark in the community? In my opinion, I would say yes, but I can understand why a lot don't think so. It's not as popular as Fate's Stay Night, which is pretty sad to think about, but it really did influence a ton of writers within the community. But I'm glad it's getting more recognition thanks to its critically acclaimed remake that just released worldwide. And I find that genuinely really cool to see. To see a visual novel getting a full-on worldwide release is fantastic, and I'm glad newcomers or longtime fans are finally getting the chance to read the remake. But in my whole honest opinion, I recommend giving the original Tsukihime a read as well. It's not a perfect visual novel for sure, but it's one of the most well-made experiences you'll have with a visual novel. It may not be as popular as its remake or Fate, but it sure as hell helped a ton of writers create VNs that were influenced by the original Tsukihime. To me, it honestly may have left a mark in the visual novel community.